Hey everyone, welcome to New Pulp Heroes' brand new web column. We're calling it Author Adventures. For those of you who remember, kick in the Wayback Machine, go back 10 years. Authors Barry Reese, Bobby Nash, and myself did a column on the old site, a written column called Table Talk. And the three of us would just basically sit and chit chat about things that authors deal with. Different story types, different publisher scenarios, different characters, things we loved about writing, advice we could give one another, advice we could give to aspiring authors, things we were learning, all that kind of stuff. So this Author Adventures is a new version of that, and we're going forward. To begin with, it'll be myself and Bobby Nash, and we're going to slowly integrate some other folks, and we'll get this thing going in just a second. All righty, welcome back. And I'm going to pop Bobby in here and we're going to get talking.
I
Hey,
want to
Bobby.
see the movie.
Pardon?
I want to see the movie that goes with that trailer.
Yeah. Well, man, if you could pack all those heroes into one movie, that would be epic.
Mm-hmm.
So the Marvel MCU would have nothing on all that. So I'd love to see that. So Bobby, you did a con appearance this morning, correct?
Yes. I was did some two virtual panels for Imaginarium this morning. One was on audiobooks and one was on podcasting.
Very cool.
Actually,
Very
I mentioned what we were doing today when we were on that panel.
Perfect. So if you were at that panel, ping us in the chat. Tell Bobby he said what a great job he did this morning, and leave your name. So just like I'd mentioned in the opener, we are going to kind of reinvent our old table talk column that we used to have that you and Barry and I did. Hopefully we can get Barry to poke his head in here one of these times, and it'll be, just like old days, and we'll get ourselves in trouble like we used to and see who we can upset and, who we can entertain and somewhere in between. But for now, we're going to go through kind of a question and answer format. So I'm going to throw some questions up and let you answer first, Bobby, and then I'll throw my 2 cents in after. The first question is, what is your favorite old pulp property?
This was a tough one because there are a lot of them that I enjoy. I got in late to the whole pulp thing because I'd read some stuff but didn't really know, the what is pulp and all that of it. But a lot of these we read, as research to write. And as much as I loved old, things like Conan, which I had grown up reading Conan or stuff like that, and that's great, and I love that. But I fell in love with the Domino Lady from reading her stories, which I read for research because I was going to write a Domino Lady story. And I read those original, and there's only 6 of them, the original 6. And I fell in love with the character. And so she quickly rose to the ranks of my favorite character, and no one has unseated her yet. There are other characters I like and then enjoy reading and have enjoyed writing, but she's the one I keep coming back to over and over again. And yeah, just love the character.
That's awesome. And that's cool that you have gotten a chance to write lots of Domino Lady stories for Moonstone and such. And
she's she's one that it's easy to go back to her. And I've as you know, as a writer, you develop these characters become real people
Hmm.
in your head. They
Absolutely.
become, and Domino Lady has certainly done that. She's in there. She's a real person. So every time I get to go back and write something new with Domino, it's like going and visiting with an old friend,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then getting into trouble with said old
Old
friend.
friend.
Because but yeah, so she's just I took a shine to her quick, and there's a few others that I enjoy revisiting as well, but she's certainly at the top of the list.
Yeah. Totally understand. So for me, I mean, it's John Carter all day long.
Hmm.
Now let me hold this up here so it's not glaring. Let me see where I can hold it. Get this just right. There you go. I saw a copy of this book in a bookstore when I was about 12 years old. I was completely fascinated with the cover. I grabbed it and took what little allowance I had saved up and bought a copy and went home and read it. This one laying here is probably the fifth or sixth one I've had. This exact same cover, the Michael Whalen artwork. Um, I think I've read that book cover to cover at least 15 times in the last 40 years. Um, just absolutely love it. John Carter, like you said, he became a real person to me.
Hmm.
Um, kind of became a role model to some extent to me, in my early teenage years, where he was somebody that I just really looked up to. He was, Edgar Rice Burroughs had created a real person and put him in these stories. And if you had told me that all this stuff was factual, I would have believed it back then.
Hmm.
Um, these days I almost wouldn't be surprised to find out with all the crazy stuff we learn, in modern times, it wouldn't surprise me if it was true anyway.
Yeah. Well.
But John Carter, he was a great guy. He was the kind of hero that you would look up to. The adventures he went on. Unfortunately, I've never had the opportunity to write a John Carter story, although it's not from lack of trying. And maybe someday that'll happen.
Yeah. Burroughs there's a style to Burroughs that just it grabs you. There's an
Yeah.
adventurous, and I really love writing adventure and action and things like that. And I went back and revisited the At the Earth's Core Pellucidar books,
Hmm.
because we did the Jamie Chase and I did the graphic novel for Dark Horse, and the plan was originally to do all of them. So I was going back, and because I'd read At the Earth's Core when I was younger, but to refresh myself, and I really got into that. And then sadly we only got to do the first book as adapt the first book, but I really got into that. Growing up, I was a big fan of those type of adventures, discovering something.
Hmm.
Excuse me, and they discover this world at the center of the earth. Star Trek, you went to other planets and discovered stuff.
Yeah.
There was some travel and go and find an adventure, and I loved that stuff as a kid, and I still do to this day. I love going on an adventure or
Yeah.
sending my characters on an adventure.
Yeah.
As I
Yeah.
get older, I do less and less adventuring on my own. Yeah, but I do
Yeah.
still like to send. I do like to send the characters on the adventures, and so that type of storytelling always grabbed me, and Burroughs does it so well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And at the time when I read it, I had no idea what Pulp Fiction was.
Mm,
I'd been never heard of it before. I'd never really been exposed to it. I didn't realize that these books had ever been anything other than these books. In
mhm.
fact, I think when I went back to buy the next book, and then I ended up buying all the rest of them over the course of the next few weeks, I was convinced that he was just some guy that was writing these books. And every time I went back to the bookstore, there was a new one. And, come to find out he'd been dead a long time. And, you know,
Yeah, but
but
yeah, because it
yeah.
was a long time before I had heard anyone use the word pulp to describe this stuff that I
Hmm.
enjoyed. This was just the kind of thing I liked, and I didn't really,
Yeah.
I didn't, I had never heard the word pulp used to describe it until somebody said, "Hey, you write pulp stuff?" And I'm like, "Really?
I
Okay,
do. Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
say so."
Yeah, I
But
don't think that really popped onto my radar until I was writing Phantom, and people were like, "Well, this
yeah,
is, you're writing Pulp character," and I'm like, "He was in the newspaper," and they were like, "But he's still a Pulp character." I'm like,
yeah.
"Okay," and then I started connecting the dots and realizing, and so that's really cool.
Hmm.
All right, so let's move on to the next question. Slight variation on the first. What is your favorite new Pulp property?
Ah. Well, I kind of broke it into two segments, because there is new pulp that is people taking old characters
Mhm.
and doing something new with them. And then there are people that are creating new characters that just fit that mold.
Mhm.
I sorry, I had to write notes. um, you know, I love the fact that people are doing stuff like Domino Lady or Secret Agent X or any of these guys they're doing that, and I don't want to take away anything because those characters are cool. I've written a few of those characters; they're fun to read. But I have this great affection for the guys that are doing new stuff.
Mhm.
Derek Fergen's Dylan, for example, is
Yes.
would be
Yes.
right up there at the top of the list.
Yes. Totally.
Barry's the Peregrine, who was
There
the
you go.
Rook at one time. Those guys are doing that type of stuff. Sean Taylor and I came up with Rick Ruby, who is a pulpy PI, or
Mhm.
Van, who's doing the Salsa and Harper books, which are pulpy heist books about thieves, and certain, Sergeant Janice, Jim Beard writes. I could go on and on. There's a lot of them,
Yeah.
but stuff like that, I dig that. They're taking some of the tropes, so there's still a pulp feel to it, but they're creating their own characters and putting their own characters into those, as opposed to just picking up something that's already there and going. And they're building these characters up. Like all the ones I've named have either won awards or they're quite popular, or
Mhm.
and so there's good stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that I have a whole lot to add to that because I really do like, the modern takes on the older characters. I love some of the stuff, and I think he doesn't get enough credit as an author. He gets a ton of credit as a publisher, but Joe Gentile's stuff,
Mm-hmm.
his Mysterious Traveler is amazing. His Mr. Keen stuff is really awesome. His Avenger stuff is great.
Mm-hmm. Man has a
Guys,
big love for the Avenger.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, and a lot of that sort of thing, it's taking an old character and dusting them off and making them cool again. Even
Mm-hmm.
not that they weren't cool, but you know what I mean, making them cool for a new audience.
Yeah.
And I love that, and I think that there's a huge need for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, like you say, you touched on all these others. I'm going to take the cheap way out and say I don't necessarily have a favorite new pulp property. I have a bunch of them
Mm-hmm.
because I really love a lot of it.
Yeah.
Dylan is amazing. The Rook / Peregrine is awesome. Um, Jim Beard stuff. I was reading his DC Jones recently. That's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's just a lot of it out there. That's a ton of
Yeah.
fun.
and and
And
and we didn't even touch on the pastiches. There's a lot of those where
oh yeah,
it's a new character, but really it's just I've always wanted to write the Shadow, and I
mhm,
can't, so I'm going to write the Shade,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And those are legitimate too, but yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of those out there as well.
Yeah, I'm starting a new novel called Jim Carter, the Warlord of Venus.
You said it as a joke. Later on tonight, you're going to be like, "Oh
Hmm.
man."
Well, I mean, my Rune Master character, he's basically, Conan meets John Carter with some Viking mythology
Mhm.
mixed in because I love Viking mythology.
Yeah.
So it's, I did a lot of the stuff that those two authors did,
Hmm.
and just had fun doing it my way.
Yeah. Well, we
So,
did that with Van Plexico had come up with this thing called Blackthorn, Thunder on
mhm,
Mars, and it was a combination of John Carter on Mars and Thundar the Barbarian. It's like if
mhm.
those two things were mixed together, and it was a ton of fun to play with those characters.
Oh yeah, yeah, that stuff. And I think that's part of what makes it so cool is it's fun to read and it's fun to write.
Hmm.
And I think most of us that are writing new pulp are having a lot of fun doing it. We're certainly not doing it to get filthy rich because that's not happening. But and it didn't really happen with the original pulp guys, so I guess we're paying homage to them with that. So,
Yeah.
we're struggling in obscurity to some extent, but I think everybody's having fun doing it, and I
Yeah,
think
the only
that's
thing
what
I
makes it
don't do
cool.
the only thing I don't do as well as they do is I don't write as fast.
Yeah,
Those guys were powerhouses. Like I need a novella by Monday and it's Friday. No
yeah,
problem. Yeah, I'm not quite there.
yeah. I can write really fast, but I have very bad creative ADD, so I can't stay on one project long enough to do that sort of thing. I'll stop in the middle of a chapter and write a song or something, and then I'll go off and do something else, and then. So if I could harness that, then maybe I could be one of those guys.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. All right. So next up, the next question is: which new pulp characters would you love to write? You know,
Ah, okay.
we've both toyed with a lot of the older ones,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
of the new
Um,
breed.
well, I was actually looking forward to Derek. Derek was doing Dylan. Uh, was it the annual or something with Dylan Odd Jobs? That's what it was. Where other writers could come in and write a Dylan story. And before he passed, he and I had talked about me doing one. And I was kind of looking forward to that. And I don't, obviously that is not happening now. But so that was one that I was really looking forward to diving into. Um, I've gotten to write a few of them. Like I did get to write a Rook story for Barry,
Mhm.
which was fun. I've played with a few others. Like I mentioned, we did the Blackthorn on Mars. I've also written versions of others. Like I've written Moonstone's version of Secret Agent X.
Mhm.
I'm doing one of their pastiche characters for them now that C.J. Henderson had created a spider pastiche called Judgment. So
Okay.
I'm actually writing some Judgment for Moonstone now, and so those are, and it was one of those things. It wasn't on my radar to do, but then they asked, and I'm like, oh, okay, that'd be cool.
Mhm.
Plus, I'm teaming her up with Domino Lady, so it's get to go revisit an old friend there. But you know, I've got to write the Avenger. That was fun. So I think one of mine that I love that I will probably never get offered the chance to write, but I do love Remo Williams, the Destroyer,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
I think that would be fun to write at least one Remo Williams.
that would be
Um,
cool.
yeah, or having written at the Earth's Core in graphic novel form, I think it would be fun to play with a Burroughs character, a Tarzan, or David David Ennis who goes to the center of the earth. Writing an original
Mhm.
story with them could be fun. I do know ERB now is doing new books
Yeah.
in all of them,
Mhm.
so that's not out of the possibility. It may happen. It may never happen. I don't know. I've not actually like pitched anything or talked to them, but I do. Those are fun characters, and so I think it would be fun to play with those. Write
Yeah.
something new, but
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
there's only
Yeah.
so many typing hours in the day.
Exactly. So I have a hard time answering this question because I kind of get the whole I'm not worthy. Like I don't feel like I'm good enough to write some of these characters the way you guys do. I don't think I could take one of your characters or one of Barry's or one of Jim's or Ron's and do it justice the way you guys did. I also got to contribute to that Rook anthology you had
Mhm.
mentioned, and from the reviews that I read, my story got panned. So
Mm.
maybe that did a little bit to my confidence in writing somebody
Yeah.
else's new pulp character. Um, but I do love a lot of the characters that are out there. I do love the Rook. I love the Sentinels from Van. Dylan's amazing. There's just a lot of really cool stuff out there. Um, so given the chance, I would probably jump at any of them, but I don't know that there's
Mhm.
necessarily one that I'm just like, oh man, I got to write that.
Yeah.
So
Well, you notice none of my answers were one. So, but when I first started, the first time I wrote one, now I started in writing comics, wanting to write things like Spider-Man or
mhm.
Fantastic Four. So in my head, I had already thought of, oh, one day I might write something I don't own or create. But it's very nerve wracking, especially in those early days. It was, because when I write anything, is the editor going to hate it? Is the publisher going to hate it?
Oh yeah.
Is the audience going to hate it? Every time. I've been doing this a long time, but every time when you write somebody else's character, it's even worse because
Oh yeah.
is the creator of the character going to hate it? And it's
Yeah.
even doubly worse when you know that person. Like if
Hmm.
Barry hated my Rook story, I know Barry. Barry's my
Yeah.
friend. That's I don't want I don't want him to look at it and go, God, this sucks. It's and it's a fear that's in there, and I don't think that ever goes away. I've learned to ignore it. Sometimes I've done enough of them now.
Hmm.
I've learned to ignore it, but certainly, I mean, you must have. You know, I mean, you wrote the Phantom for quite a while.
Oh,
And,
I
and
mean,
that. And that
40 some
comes,
issues in, and I was still ready
yeah,
to get fired at any moment.
yeah. But
So,
because that does come with, the Phantom has quite the built-in audience.
yeah.
Just like when we did the adaptation of At the Earth's Core, that comes with such a built-in audience. It's like, I don't want to piss these people off.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy
And
thing with the Phantom is you've got, the Phantom is different things in different parts of the world too. I
mhm,
mean, the Phantom in India is a little bit different than the Phantom in Scandinavia, is a little bit different than the Phantom in Australia, is different than the Phantom in the United States. And each one of those demographics has a different bent to how they want to see stories written. I caught a lot of flack for not spending, 7, 8 pages doing character development. And then if you release a book in the United States with 7, 8 pages in a 22-page comic book of character development, you're going to get blasted. There's not
mhm,
enough action. So, you make these high-paced action adventure stories, and then you've got pockets overseas that are calling you the worst hack ever because you're not developing the characters for,
yeah.
half of every issue.
I hadn't thought of
So,
it like that. Wow, yeah, it's
yeah, and it completely, I never would have thought of it in a million years until I started getting blindsided with it for a while there and to this day, some of the overseas publishers they won't even talk to me.
mhm.
So it's, I think
Wow,
it's just the weirdness of having such a big character like the Phantom. But,
right.
you know, I think it would almost be scarier to have Barry turn to me and go, that Rook story you turned in, that really sucked. I hated having to publish that. That would hurt much worse.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so, Barry, if you're listening, if you feel that way, please keep it to yourself, brother.
Well, it's been a few. It's been several years now. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I'm sure. Even if he did, he's over it. But
Too funny.
there also is the thing where there is a bit of, you feel good to be invited to the party.
Oh, absolutely.
It's, like, I don't always seek it out, but sometimes it is, when a publisher gets to know you, and like Moonstone, they're like, we're doing Green Hornet. Do you want to write Green Hornet? You know, at first it's like, yeah, and then you're like, ooh, and you're like, I'm kind of, can I do it? And but it is it is a tricky thing because, especially because there's an audience out there that's just waiting for you to do it
Hmm.
wrong. You
Oh,
know
yeah. Yeah.
that they want to be able to go, you suck.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and but sometimes you just have to learn to put that out of your head and just do it and do the best you can and hope for the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. And, when I was given Black Bat, when Phantom left Moonstone and, Joe was like, hey, here's a couple of things we can try. And I really liked Black Bat. And I was like, we were taking the Phantom and we were modernizing him in that last, 12 issues that we had put out. And I was like, well, let's take that same approach to Black Bat. So I modernized Black Bat and I kind of reimagined him. What would the creators have done if they created him in the 21st century? That sort of thing. And it just bombed.
Mhm.
The majority of the existing Black Bat fan base didn't want to see it. They wanted to see stuff that took place back in the 20s, 30s, stuff that was very true to the stories that were already out. And I
Mhm.
get that. I spent a long time as a professional musician, and I know a lot of bands that when they try and break out of the mold of whatever made them famous, they get blasted because they sold out or they got
Mhm.
soft or whatever. They're not putting out the same kind of music they were putting out before. So I could see that with a fan base where it's,
Mhm.
I've read, I've watched every TV episode of the Green Hornet 100 times, and if I read anything that comes outside of the bounds of those TV shows, it sucks, and I'm going to blast whoever created it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm a little leery because I did write a modern day Secret Agent X novel that hasn't come out yet. I get to looking at Secret Agent X's origin. His origin works in the modern day without changing a thing. There's just better technology.
yeah.
And so I mentioned that to a publisher, and they're like, "Ooh, I like that. Do it." And I'm like, so, but so yeah, I'm curious to see what the reaction is going to be because I'm writing. He's the same character,
Yeah.
but it's
The
just
surroundings are different.
today. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know
Yeah.
a lot of people treat them as period pieces, which is weird because they were not
Mhm.
created that way. They
No.
were. It's just it happens to be that outside our window right now.
Hmm.
And so I do think, I mean, Moonstone keeps Domino Lady in the 30s. So I mean, that's their call. I think she could work modern day as well. But so I mean, I get it. They do what they want. On the other hand, I just did a Kolchak story for Moonstone, and the Kolchak stuff is because they sent me some stuff to read that they were doing, and I was reading the one comic that precedes the story I'm doing, and Kolchak pulls out a smartphone, and I'm like, it threw me. But it's like, okay, it's modern day, got it. But
Mhm.
I'm just not used to seeing. Kolchak was payphones.
Yeah.
Because they made a point of I need a dime.
Mhm.
It's and so but it still works. Once you just get over that initial I'm not used to
Oh, yeah.
seeing him with the cell phone, it's still
Yeah,
the same character. It's
and old characters have been reinvented 100 times,
yeah.
and
I
brought
mean,
brought forward in time,
yeah.
you know?
And comic books do it so well. I mean, there's like
Oh, yeah.
it's like a sliding thing. It's just, you know,
Oh, yeah. Bruce Wayne
Reed
has been in
Richard.
his early 30s for what, 100 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So,
just like at one point, Reed Richards fought in World War II. Then he
mhm.
didn't.
Yeah.
It's just a slidable scale. I mean, really, the only ones that you are attached to are things like Captain America because he was frozen at the end of World War II. That World War II, he just stays frozen longer.
Mhm.
Because that's what the movie, because in in my head, I remember he was unfrozen in the '60s.
Yeah.
And then lived through all this. But if you look at the movies now, he was thawed out in the late '90s.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a
Instead of
lot
10
of
years, it's 50.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to do there that slides, and like I said, most of these characters the tiniest little changes can work in modern day. I think.
Yeah. So we'll have to talk about that more later
Sorry,
because
I could do a whole hour on
yeah,
that. Yeah.
I have an idea I want to pitch you, but later. So we're gonna flip this over here. I'm not gonna say flip the script because that's so cliche these days, but we're gonna turn this question on its head and say, who would you love to see tackle your own original characters?
Well, it's weird because I, I'm doing that now for the first time. I have the snow books that I do.
Mhm.
Let's say the poster there, snow
There you go.
there. I'm doing. I decided a lot of people do anthologies, and anthologies are cool, but I didn't want to just do a snow anthology. I was trying to come up with ways to do it a little differently, and so I came up with this idea of snow shorts. Originally, I was just going to write them. That'd be like when I do stories for other magazines with
Mhm.
snow, and then I would just collect them. And then I decided, let me reach out to some writer friends and say, hey, are you interested in writing, a snow story? So we're doing some snow shorts where it's a 10,000 word short story. People write them, and we release them as 99-cent ebooks. And then when we get three of them, because the snow novellas come out in around 30,000 words. So when
Mhm.
we get three of them, we'll collect them in like a three in
Yeah.
one book. And so I was excited to see what other writers would do with the characters. I was also terrified. Not not so much that they wouldn't be good because I went to people I knew, you know.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't that they wouldn't be good. My fear was, what if they write my characters better than I do?
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
exactly where my mind went.
it's like it's a bit terrifying.
Yeah.
And now so far there have been five. Of the five, I wrote one of them. Gary Phillips did one. Nicole Givens Kurtz did one. Brian K. Morris did one, and Mark Bosquet did one. And absolutely, each one of them knocked them right out of the park.
I bet.
And well, what they would do, what we're doing is we're doing you don't have to do the whole. You can just pick a character. Doesn't even have to be the main character. Like so, like Nicole said, I want to do one with his mother. I haven't even had his mother in the book yet. She's been mentioned,
Mhm.
but she hasn't shown up. And so I'm like, fine, let's work out some details and go with it. And she wrote a fantastic little thriller about Snow's mom. That just awesome. It's an awesome little thriller with her. And so it was fun. So seeing how others are interpreting, the characters that I created is fantastic. And so I have more people, you know, already slated, and if they continue to do well, maybe we'll keep going into the future with them, and that was fun. So yeah, so those guys. So like I said, I'm picking a lot of new pulp guys or guys I know. I do a lot of conventions. I see other authors I've gotten to know over the years, and just trying to find people with different, unique voices, I guess. So that was fun. But there's, I'm also we're doing. I did a story for Pulp Reality, Charles Millhouse's magazine, where I teamed up. Charles writes Captain Hawkland, who is a pulp aviator character. Well, I have Lance Starr, who is a pulp aviator character. So I wrote a story where they meet. And so we had fun doing that. And because, I sent it back to Charles to make sure I got Captain Hawkland right. And we had so much fun doing it. He's going to write one now where they meet again. So I'm curious to see Charles's take on Lance Starr and stuff like that. So, so it's, I'm not as worried as I used to be about other people writing my stuff. And, and Sean Taylor and I, obviously we both created Rick Ruby. So Sean writes Rick as well as I do. And, we're different types of writers, but he tells just a fantastic, pulpy noir type story. And so it's not, like I said, it's not something I ever thought about just like, I want this person, but there's so many, like I said, it's hard to keep to one answer because we know so many fantastic writers.
Oh yeah.
It's like, don't be surprised if I tackle you in the next phase and go, you want to write a snow story? Because I'm slowly working through the list. And I mean, a few people have said no, which is totally cool. I get it. And but a few have said yes. And I'm over the moon that anybody wants to write my characters first and foremost. And so,
yeah, I could definitely take all my original ones and line them up and just hand them out because, I would love to see Joe Gentile take Death Angel and see what he could do with her. I think that would be really cool. Love to see, Barry take Xander and do something with him. I'd love to see, I'd really like to see your take on the Rune Master. I think that would be really cool.
The Rune Master is a cool character.
I think it would just be fun to watch, like you said, to sit back and watch other people play with your toys and see what they come up with and things that they will add to the Milo. And, I think that would be really cool. Well, I did have a fifth question, but we're a couple minutes over here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up so that we're not overextending people's attention spans because there's only so much they want to listen to us jibber jabber. But if you like this, let us know, ping us, and we're going to try and do this monthly. And if people like it enough, we might even bump it up to every couple of weeks. And if people really like it, we might bump it up to weekly. So let us know in the comments. And thanks for joining us. Thanks again, Bobby. It's great chatting with you. And,
absolutely.
We will talk to you again soon.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to check out New Pulp Heroes for all the latest news, interviews, and our new Chapter 1 feature, which will give you the first chapter of a brand new Pulp book where you can test it out and kind of have a trial and then get totally hooked on it like a drug dealer and have to run off and buy copies. So check that out on newpulpheroes.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.